In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to make this cool stacking effect with text. The first step is to type anywhere in the composition window. And I'm going to align this with the Align menu. And I'm also going to right-click on it with the Selection tool, go to Transform, and center anchor point in Layer Content. Now that we're all centered, I'm going to pre-compose this by right-clicking on the layer in the timeline and pre-composing it. I'll call it Stack Org, Original. And this pre-composition will allow me to make changes to it later. The next step is to duplicate it, and then I'm going to go into the position line and create two keyframes about half a second apart. And I'm going to move this one up about 150 pixels, then duplicate the original again, and now I'm going to make two keyframes on this one and move the Y position down about 150 pixels. So now I get that, which is the basis of my stack. The next step is to make these easy ease keyframes by selecting them and hitting F9 on your keyboard. Then I'll go into the graph editor and I'm going to accentuate this slow in, slow out effect by dragging those handles into the middle on both. So top and bottom get both handles pulled in, creating a nice slow in and slow out. The next step is to pre-compose both the top and the bottom layer. So right-click on the layer, go to Pre-compose, and make sure that Move All Attributes to the new composition is selected. Really important. And I'll do that with the other one. Pre-compose that. Call this one Stack Bottom. Move All Attributes to New Composition is selected and press OK. The next thing I'm going to do is draw a mask. Select the rectangle tool and draw right on the layer. And I'm going to leave a little gap between the top of the original layer and my new layer. So I think that looks good. Do the same thing with the bottom. With the rectangle tool, draw from the bottom and leave a little gap. The next thing I'm going to do is duplicate this layer, Command D on a Mac. I'll create one more layer and I'll use my arrow tool to bring the position up just a little bit. I want to do this really subtly. And then what I'll do in the layer is I'll open up the mask part of the layer and select the mask and bring that up as well. So there's a little gap again between my layers. Do the same thing for the bottom. I'm going to move the duplicated layer down to the bottom. In the position line, I'm just going to use my arrow tool just to move it down where it looks good. Then I'll select my mask and move that down with my arrow tool. So now there's a little gap. So this is what I have so far. Looks pretty good. But I'm going to offset the layers. So there's a little delay. So I'll pick the middle two and move those in just about 5 frames. And then pick the last two and move those in 5 more frames, so at the 10 frame mark. So this shape with my layers creates this little delay effect. The next thing I want to do is select my original layer and I'm going to put a little fill on this, some color. Go up to Effects and Presets and I'm going to search Fill, F-I-L-L. It's in the Generate menu and I'm going to drag it right onto that layer. And the red looks pretty good. But I'm going to drag another one onto the next layer and make that kind of a grayish color. Then I'll copy that and paste it onto the corresponding layer right below. And then paste it again on the bottom layer and make it even a darker gray. So now I get this kind of fade off effect, which I think is kind of cool. And I'll copy that and paste it onto the corresponding top layer. So now I get this effect, which I think works pretty well. The next thing you could do is add some outlines to this. So I'm going to double click on the original layer. And let me show you how flexible this is. So I could replace this text. Let's call it practice. And I'll align it into the center of the frame. And if I go back into my full composition, you can see that my text has been replaced. So you can see how flexible this could be. You could reuse this animation multiple times with different text. I'm just going to undo that and go back to my original text. Let's add some outlines to this. In the character menu, select the fill, then click on the box with a slash through it to take off the fill. Then in the text layer, in the animate menu, add a stroke width. Make this 10 pixels. Now if I go back to my full composition, you can see I have this really cool effect with the outlines. The next thing I'm going to do is make a loop out of this. So I'm going to take my cursor to about the 2-second mark, and I'll set my work area to that 2-second mark by pressing N on my keyboard. Then I'll right click in the work area and trim comp to work area. Now it's 2 seconds long. So I'm going to select all of the layers and pre-compose them by right clicking and going to pre-compose. I'm going to call this stack full. Go up to composition, composition settings, and I'm going to set this to 4 seconds. Then duplicate the layer, Command D on a Mac or copy and paste, and move it over so it fills the composition. Then with the layer selected, go to Layer, Time, Time Reverse Layer. Now that second duplicate runs in reverse so that it holds on screen and animates out at the end. Voila, my stack text effect.